Hi guys, and welcome to the next instalment of this garden project series. Hope you're all doing well. In this week's video we're going to be building a dividing fence to go between the patioed area of the garden and the grassed area, which is not yet grassed. The main reason we're doing that is to prevent the dog going on the grassed area during the winter time when it gets really muddy, because he ends up dragging the whole garden in the house, which is not good. And also, while the grass seed is growing, it's a good idea to keep the dog off of it because he loves to dig, as most dogs do, I think, but there we go. In the previous video I did a little review of one of these paint spraying guns. It wasn't this particular gun. That one stopped working halfway through sealing the patio, so I've sent that one back and I got this one as a replacement. Hopefully it's a bit better than the last one. It feels better. It's got metal nozzles as opposed to plastic ones, and it just feels like it's got a lot more power, so that's pretty good. Now I'm going to be using this to spray paint the fences, so we'll see how it gets on, and I'll put a link to this one in the description as well if you like what you see, and I'll give you my honest feedback at the end of this video. Now with that being said, if you haven't seen part 1, 2 or 3 of this series, you might want to check those videos out if you're interested in building your own patio. In part 1 I prepared the area for the patio sub base. I dug out around 100 to 200 mil for the type 1 MOT to be laid, and then I built a retaining wall using these sleepers. I run a cable to the bottom of the garden which is going to be used for patio lighting a bit later on in these videos. And then I compacted it in layers so that we've got a nice solid foundation to lay our patio slabs. In part 2 I installed this socket at the bottom of the garden, so we've now got outdoor power. I then get way too excited over the Indian sandstone slabs. I show you how to mix up cement while spilling most of it on the floor. And then I show you how to lay the Indian sandstone slabs. In part 3 I apply a professional sealer to the slabs to give them some protection, and then I do an experiment to see how good that sealer actually is. Finally I grout the patio using easy joint grouting compound. It's honestly the easiest method for grouting a patio I've ever come across, so if you haven't seen those videos you may want to check them out first, and I'll put a link to the first 3 parts of this series in the description below. Now I'm going to be taking more of a back seat in this video and just doing more of the commentary side, so my old man's going to be doing the work. Now just a little bit of background about him. He started off as a cabinet maker. He's done a lot of carpentry, joinery and fabrication work, so hopefully we can learn a thing or two from this video. I've come up with a design for the fence going down the middle of the garden. It's going to be very simple, made out of sleepers, roofing, batten and fence posts. So we start off by cutting down some sleepers at 1 meter lengths, and to do this we're going to be using a skill saw because our miter saw is not quite big enough to go all the way through a sleeper. And then we just use an electric plane to neaten up the bottom of the sleeper to get rid of that cut line, put some bevels on the edges just to get rid of the breakout, and that just makes it look much neater. I then have a quick crash course on how to neatly countersink plastic. And for this we're going to be using a slightly blunt drill bit, because if you use a brand new sharp one it just wants to draw into the plastic and it leaves a horrible cut. So slightly blunt on the leading edge of the drill, and you can see it leaves a really nice clean countersink. These plastic pieces are then screwed onto the bottom of the sleepers, and that's to prevent water being drawn up into the wood and to stop it going rotten. It would be beneficial to paint these first as well, so you've got that extra layer of protection. And we repeat this same process for cutting the remainder of the uprights. So here's one of the frameworks we made up earlier, and we're going to have another one of these up the other end with a gate in the middle. The horizontal sleepers are full length, so 2.4 meters. We then used a couple of little packers to space it off of the ground, and that way the water shouldn't soak up into the sleepers. We use some nice long screws to secure these sleepers together so it's nice and strong, obviously countersinking the heads so that they sit below the surface of the wood. And then we decide to have a race, Milwaukee versus Makita. Who do you think is going to win? Let me know what you think in the comments. I'd love to hear who you think is going to win this race. So to keep this fair we've got a couple of pilot holes going in, the same depth, a couple of countersinks, and we've both got a full battery.
3, 2, 1.
Clear winner. I then dig out the ground level so we can have a couple of posts here, and that's going to hold the fence in position And then we're going to have a couple of gates in between these posts as well. The bottoms of the posts are painted with this blackjack bitumen paint, and that's to help preserve the life of the posts, to prevent water being absorbed up into them and just stop them going rotten basically. So there we have our framework for a nice solid fence going down the middle of the garden to separate the patioed area from the grassed area. You may have already seen the thumbnail for this video, so you know this is going to have some planters in the top of it, and we're going to have slats going down the sides. Before we do any of that though, I'm just going to do a little bit of painting to prepare the wood so that we don't have to do it later. And for that I'm going to be using this Ronseal 1 coat in Harvest Gold colour. And there's a good deal on Amazon at the moment, so if you need to get some, I'll put a link in the description where you can get it. And by buying it through the links, you'll also be supporting the channel. So thank you very much if you buy it through the links. Just look at that contrast, it's a lovely colour, and we'll also be using this paint for spraying the fences a bit later on in this video. So while we're waiting for that paint to dry, let's get on with making some simple garden gates that will go in between our fences. The main framework for the gate is going to be made using these 3x2 timbers, and we're going to be using half lap joints so they're nice and strong. There's various different methods for doing a half lap joint, but for this method we're going to be using a miter saw set with a stop going halfway through the timber, or just above halfway actually, because we're going to clean it up later. So once all the little pieces are smashed out, we can then clean it up using a router to the halfway point. And then we just repeat this process for the remaining timbers to make up a nice framework for our gates. And would you just look at that? Like a glove. You can glue it as well, but some stainless steel screws will be good enough for this. Don't forget to use a square to make sure everything is, well, square actually, and then put some more screws in. A few more screws later and you've got yourself a solid framework for your gate. You want to check that it's still square by measuring from corner to corner, and if needed you can make a little adjustment just by giving it a little tweak. I love a tool that's got multiple uses, and this paint sprayer can also be used for blowing the dust off of your saw. You're blown away, right? A diagonal centre brace is also used for a gate, just to reinforce its strength and to stop it sagging basically. So we measure halfway across this 3x2, position the brace across the corners with the centre mark lining up with the corner of the frame, mark it out, and then cut those angles on the miter saw. And that's how you make a nice strong frame for a simple garden gate. A couple of long wood screws are used to fix the centre brace in position, and the same process is repeated to make a second garden gate, and the gates are going to go in this gap between the frames that we made earlier. So all we need to do is finish off these gates by cutting down some wooden slats to go on the fronts of them. And to make the slats more visually appealing, you can either put a point on them or a round on the end. So using a compass, I draw a semicircle on the end of one of the slats. We use a jigsaw to cut it out, and then we can use this as a template for all of the other slats. I use a couple of offcuts to space the slats off of the floor, and we start off by securing the end ones, and then once these ones are down we can work out what gap we need in between the slats, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment. To work out the size of the gaps between the slats, you push all the slats over to one side, measure the space in between, and then divide it by how many gaps you want. In this case it's 170mm in the space, so we divide that by how many gaps, which is 7, and then we find some packers which are roughly that width to space out the slats nice and evenly. At this point the design was really coming to life. We got these planters off of Amazon and they fit perfectly to the width of the sleeper. We will have to slightly trim them down a little bit so that they fit in there nicely because they're riding on top of each other at the moment. So if we just trim the end lip off 2 of the pots, it should fit in there perfectly. Some of these fence panels haven't been painted in years and they're looking in a very sorry state. So I start off by giving them a clean off with a broom. You could jet wash them off actually, that might be beneficial, but I just start with a stiff broom. And you can see it makes it look a bit better just by giving it a scrub. We're going with the 1 coat Harvest Gold for the fences as well, and they also come in these pouches, which is quite good. It's better for the environment because you're not using as much plastic like you do with the tubs of paint. It's highly concentrated, so you mix 1 pouch to 4 litres of water and that will make you 5 litres of paint. It's a 1 litre pouch, so you can just fill this up with water. Put the lid on, give it a good shake so you get all the paint off the edges of the pouch, and then just pour that into your paint bucket and repeat the process for another 3 litres of water. Give it a thorough stir. You can use one of these attachments that goes in the drill, that makes it much easier. Fill up your paint spraying gun, clip in your battery, and it's raining again. When the rain did eventually die off, I managed to get the fences painted using the spray gun, and I have to say I'm very pleased with this one. It's much better than the last one I used, so I'll put a link to this in the description below if you want to get one. It covers really nice and evenly, and with the 1 coat paint especially, you can do a fence panel in under 3 minutes I'd say. And if you've ever painted a fence by hand using a brush, you'll know it's horrible work. And plus you get those drip marks that go through the other side and upset your neighbours. So just do it with a spray gun, it's much easier. The initial outlay is more, but it's going to save you so much time and effort. It's worth noting that the new panels covered really well with just 1 coat, whereas the older panels require a bit more paint to bring them back to life. I use a brand new blade in my Stanley knife to cut off the end lip of 6 of the pots, 6 out of 8, and then that way they fit in the top of the fence nicely. So there we have it, we have a Monty-proof fence going down the middle of the garden. Our dog's called Monty by the way, and that's to keep him off of the lawn when it gets really boggy. Sometimes it's nice not to have too much of a plan and just a rough idea in your head to work from. That's what this one started out as, and I'm really pleased with how it turned out. So I hope this video has given you some inspiration for your own garden projects. If you enjoyed the video and found it useful, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to the channel if you're not already subscribed, and if you click the alarm bell you'll get notifications when I post new videos. The next part of this series will be about building a staircase going from the patioed area down to the grassed area. We'll be building a rockery as well, and also landscaping the bottom section of the garden. So stay tuned for that. It probably won't be for a few weeks because I'm battling against the terrible weather at the moment. So I've got some servicing videos to do in between now and then, but hopefully we will resume this project very soon. Cheers guys, take care. How did you get down there? Get back up. Back up. Bloody fence is working well, isn't it? Look.